How's it going, everybody? Back today with first video today in this series on spanning the rating spectrum. It's going to be a series where I'm going to be playing some rapid games against players who are generally below my rating level. So I do have a spanning the rating spectrum playlist, which includes players that are about 1500 and above. That's mainly what I've done so far, but I'm going to do some games as well with some lower rated players. And before we get into that, I just want to underscore why I'm doing this and kind of what I see as the point of doing this. So basically the idea is, I make no claims to be like a super great chess player or anything like that. It's the great thing about chess. The numbers are the numbers, right? So, I'm pretty decent, my rapid rating is on chess.com is in the high 1600s at this point. As far as their data on their rapid players, that's, I think, 98th percentile. That's decent enough, but there are a lot of people who are much higher rated than I am. However, I think for people who, aspire to improve their game, one valuable thing you might get is sort of seeing how people, maybe at my rating level, might be thinking about things, and it might offer sort of an example as to possibly different ways to change your thought processes and, dare I say, improve your thought processes, to take that next step. And so that's basically what I'm doing this series for, just basically for educational purposes. Statistically, if you look at, I don't know exactly how it works, but I remember the gist of it. Essentially, if you're playing someone that's something like 400 points different in rating level, it's something nuts. Like the person who is rated 400 points higher should win something like 99 out of 100 games. I don't know if those numbers are exact, but the point is they definitely express the point, which is that the player that is 400 points higher rated is an incredible odds-on favorite to win, and it only just gets exponentially bigger as the rating difference increases. So for rating differences like that against players that I'm going to be playing, just realistically, I don't really expect to lose. There's a small chance of it. But again, that's not the point. The point is not for me to buff up my ego or something, but just to say, hey, you might be in this rating range. You might be aspiring to improve your chess game. Here are some of my thoughts on, this kind of example of play at this level, in different ways to take the next step. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get a game going here, and we'll jump into it. So I'm going to put it on pause a second, then I'll come back when I have a game set up. All right, so looks like we have a game set up here. I am playing, let's go ahead and put out a move. I'm playing Olda 2, rated 1070. Looks like she or he might be exclusively playing rapid at this point, and we'll sort of go with it. So this is definitely a playable move. It's not a move I see very often. Usually these kind of knight moves are bound up with some kind of Chigorin defense. Yeah, again, I'm not a big opening theoretician, as you guys will have seen through the example of some of my other games. But yeah, I'm just going to play my normal London. We'll go over any opening intricacies as after the game. This is an unrated game, I believe, so nobody has rating points on the line here, which I think is totally fine. All right. So not a very challenging opening or choice at this point. I do sometimes like to play knight c3, the Jobava London, against these kind of kingside fianchetto setups. But let's just stay in normal London territory. Just e3. So bishop g7. Normal London stuff would be like knight f3. Yeah, that seems fine. The idea might be to try to get castled quickly, play c4 and maybe d5. We'll see. Usually when they set up a fianchetto on the king side, you don't want to bring your bishop to d3 because it's just hitting on this pawn wall here on g6 and h7. So bishop e2 looks normal. H3 also looks normal, just trying to make sure my bishop doesn't get into trouble. Bishop e2 though, bishop e2, if knight h5, bishop g5. Yeah, I think that should be okay. Let's play bishop e2. So I'm playing in my normal sort of fashion as I would be if I was playing somebody around my rating strength. I'm not playing super fast or anything. Characteristically, I'm behind on time. So h3 is possible, castling is possible. I could even leave it open to castle queenside. But maybe we don't have to get too cute. So if castle's kingside, knight h5, bishop g5. If they try something like f6, bishop h4, g5. I could even g5. I could just take on g5 because the knight is going to be hanging on h5. So yeah, let's just castle. Okay, so at this point, probably h3 is smart. I mean, black's probably trying to look to break with e5, and I probably want to have some options of places to put my bishop. So probably I'm looking to play c4, knight c3, rook c8, things of that nature. So this is an interesting looking move. I know there are some lines where black does things like this. I think sometimes they do it in the King's Indian, bringing the queen over like this. Maybe the idea is to support an e5 push. But yeah, it just strikes me as not wanting to, you shouldn't want to lose a tempo moving your queen like this when you haven't developed your queenside pieces. So I'm not sure if I like that move too much for black. c4, knight c3, rook c8 is sort of the plan I mentioned. c4 if e5, bishop h, or c4 if e5 just trades on e5, and then bishop h2. Seems okay. Yeah, let's do that. Just try to get some space. So they played e5 as expected. Now, first thought here is just to take, then to retreat the bishop. Bishop h2. Bishop h2, yeah, probably bishop h2. So yeah, knight c3. Maybe queen b3 too. Okay, so they come in this way. So a normal looking idea here would be to play knight b to d2, challenge the knight. Also queen c2, developing, getting my queen off of the file, developing with tempo on the knight. If they play bishop f5, I have bishop d3. That all seems normal. Alright, let's go with that. I expect bishop f5, against which bishop d3 is probably what I want to do. They have to always make sure that they're defending e5 too. I have two attackers on it. Really kind of hampers their play with the c6 knight and the queen. Well, I guess they've got three defenders with the g7 bishop too. Although if bishop f5, bishop d3, knight b4, is that might be good for black. Bishop f5, bishop d3, knight b4, hitting my queen. Yeah, maybe I'm not a big fan of that. Okay, I might have had knight h4 after bishop f5 as well. Okay, so they hit c4, c4 is defended twice. Knight c3 looks normal. Maybe a3, trying to stop knight b4s in response. If we get bishop f5 on the board. a3. Because if I play bishop d3, then they have knight b4, winning my light square bishop. a3. Bishop. Knight c3, knight b. Sorry, let me step back. Knight c3, bishop f5. Again, if bishop d3, knight b4 kind of looks annoying. Yeah, I think a3 is a decent looking move. Let's check to see what move we're on. This is where I move 12 and I have not hit my time goals. So my next time goal is by move 16. I want to have 23 moves completed. And I'm generally staying within range of them in terms of time. Okay, so knight c3 normal development. Looks like an idea here. Looking to jump into d5. I don't see a major problem with that. All right, let's do it. If we get something like bishop e6, maybe bring one of the rooks, probably the f rook to d1. Try to gain some more control over d5. Although, after bishop e6, c4 is going to be hit twice. So maybe I will have to play knight d5 in that situation. Hitting the queen. They probably take on d5. I'll recapture, hitting their knight. And their knight. It's going to be somewhat short on squares. You might have to retreat if they go to a5, and b4 is an idea. Yeah, b4 is definitely an idea there. Yeah, so opponent's playing decently well so far. Yeah, nothing terrible to critique as of yet. Um, yeah, we'll see sort of with the analysis, but yeah, nothing that I'm spotting that seems to be terribly off kilter or anything. Again, so my plans from this position, I want to get my rooks active. Rook fd8, rook ac8 look normal. Probably expand on the queen side with like b4. Those look like normal plans. Okay, so in this case, well, still the bishop holds e5. Are they looking to? No, they can't take on h3. That doesn't make sense. Leading with the queen. So here, lining a rook up against their knight looks normal. So looks pretty good. So rook fd1 is the first thought that I have. Rook fd1. Rook fd1, bishop f5. Maybe I just play e4 against bishop f5. It kind of looks like it would be annoying for them. They're hitting e4 twice, but the d6 knight is pinned. Yeah, rook fd1 looks pretty good. I don't see any huge issues with it either. Yeah, let's go for it. Yeah, b4, b5, trying to dislodge a defender of the e5 pawn. Seems like a possible plan. Although I do want to get my a rook out of the scope of the bishop. So rook ac8, something like that is a move I'm looking forward to as well. I mean, I'm immediately threatening to win a piece here with c5. Taking advantage of the pin. Okay. So I don't think this does anything to address my threat of c5. c5, what does black do in response there? Also, they just undefended the e5 pawn. So I have a couple of choices. I have c5, I have bishop takes e5, but c5 just taking advantage of the pin looks like a better option. And assuming this is all correct, this is an example of tactical awareness. Black needing to show a bit more tactical awareness here. So when you get pins like this, you've got to make sure, like in this case, the d1 rook pinning the knight to the queen, you've got to make sure if you don't address it, you don't have some tactics that are working against you. So yeah, I don't see any major issues with c5. Yeah, let's go for it. Yeah, tactical awareness is probably going to be the biggest thing that I mention at these lower rating levels, because again, black played decently well in the opening, I guess I would say. But yeah, it looks to have made a major error here, and this kind of is consistent with a game that I did an analysis of that I played the other day, where I just talked about the comparative difference in value of studying middle game play and tactics versus like openings. Again, I think a lot of people who are newer to chess focus a lot of time on openings because it's a tangible thing, again, that you can kind of wrap your arms around. You know, hey, I need to learn XYZ many lines. But yeah, oftentimes those lines don't get played, and people just end up, you know, making tactical blunders in the middle game. So a lot of times people can get out of the opening, out of the first 10-15 moves just fine, and then they end up in tactical difficulty like this. So I mean, we'll see how the the video series goes, but I do expect to be saying a lot in these games against the lower rated players about sort of the need for tactical awareness, the value of studying plans in middle games, and improving your tactical play. So black here defends e5, but I can still just take the knight. I think that's fine. So I'm looking at moves like rook a c8. I'm looking at b4. I'm looking at knight to d5. Yeah, knight d5 actually looks pretty nice. Threatening knight c7, forking rook and queen. I could play b4 after that. Ask the knight where it's going to go. I think I like the looks of that. Really just taking advantage of this weak point now black has in their position on d5. I don't see anything terribly wrong with that. So yeah, let's go for it. So I have to watch my queen on the open c file now. Eventually black is going to bring a rook to c8, no doubt. But for the moment, my queen is protecting c8, c7, so in some variations. Okay. So they get their bishop out of the way. So knight c7 is a fork on queen and rook, but they have a move, say, like rook a c8. I could play knight takes e6. They play rook takes c2, so we've traded queens. They play, I play knight takes e6. They play rook takes c2. I play knight takes f8. So now I'm up a rook. If they take on e2, I've won an exchange in the transaction, and I can then take on d7, being up a full rook. So that would win a full rook in that transaction. So again, that's knight c7, rook a c8, knight takes e6, rook takes c2, knight takes f8, rook takes e2, and then knight takes d7. My knight might be a little trapped, in which case, even if I lose it, I'm still up in exchange in the transaction. Do they have a way to counter knight c7? I mean, at minimum, it should just be winning the a8 rook for the knight at absolute worst, I think. So, which is to say, at minimum, should be winning an exchange. But because their queen is hanging, the fact that they can put a rook on c8 and be X-raying my queen through my knight doesn't seem to be as problematic. Knight c7. Yeah, that just at minimum looks to win an exchange. Again, notice my time. I'm still taking a lot of time. So they play this move rook a c8. Again, my idea was knight takes e6, rook takes c2, knight takes f8, rook takes e2. I'm up in exchange there. But then knight takes d7, I'm up a full rook. In this particular transaction, already up a piece for a pawn before this. All right, so then if they do this, again, we just want a rook in that transaction. I could even play rook takes d6 here and be hitting their bishop, such that if they played rook takes e2, I just have rook takes d7. I think I'd like that. Rook takes d6, rook takes e2, rook takes d7, rook takes b2. And then I could take on e5. We got an active rook. I think I like that position. Although I do have to watch my a1 rook. So rook takes d6. Rook takes d6. I think I'd like that. Rook takes d6, rook takes e2, rook takes d7, rook takes b2. That's even in terms of the transaction at that point. Yeah, I think I'd like this. So yeah, I think I started to say this a while ago, but time-wise, again, I'm behind in time. I'm just taking my time, even though playing a lower-rated opponent. Taking the time to be accurate, and yeah, just not taking anything for granted. Making sure I'm playing sound chess. We'll see. I definitely will have made some mistakes, I assume. We'll check that out in the analysis. Yeah, my a rook being lined up with black's bishop is annoying, because if I think of somewhere down the line playing something like b4 trying to hit the knight, black can counterattack with e4 hitting my knight and my a1 rook. So I'm going to have to do something about my a1 rook at some point. And I do have to watch my back rank too, because after they take the bishop, could run into possible issues there. We'll see. I mean, back rank is fine with my rook on it for now, but it is something to keep in mind. Okay, so this move, so they're trying to counterattack my rook and say, hey, I'm attacking your rook, I'm attacking your bishop, what are you going to do about it? But I have rook d2 here supported by the knight, which protects my bishop and protects my b pawn. So I think I like that move. I could just play rook d1 as well and solve my issue with the a1 rook. I think I might like that even more. Although rook d2 does have the advantage of doing away with their annoying active rook. Rook d1, rook d1. Let's play rook d1. If they move their bishop, I do have, say, rook 6 to d2. Just trying to get rid of. Yeah, let's go this way. So again, we're each threatening each other's bishops. something to keep in the back of my mind now is, again, the e5 pawn is, at least for the moment, not sufficiently defended. So I'll try to remember that in different lines I look at as possible candidate moves. Yeah, so this is a totally winning position for white. The issue is just conversion, and really just trying not to make any mistakes. For me, I'm happiest if I get a position like this. If I give basically no advantage back. I might not play the optimal moves that the computer says are correct, but I don't want to be in a situation, let's say the advantage right now might be like +6 or +7 for white. I don't want to be in a situation where I'm at that kind of advantage and then I make a blunder and it's only like +1 for white. That's what I'm trying not to do. I'm not trying to make sure I don't go from like +6 to +5.5 or something. I don't really care about that. That's not practical. Okay, so they defend. I could take the pawn. That seems normal enough. With bishop takes e5. Just asking them if they want to trade off their dark squared bishop. And also giving my king a square and not having to worry about back rank issues there. Bishop takes e5, f6. Bishop takes e5, f6, probably... yeah, I just retreat my bishop either on the back where it came from, or maybe to c3. I think I have sufficient options there. But knight takes e5 just hits the bishop again. But I especially like that bishop takes e5. Ask them if they want to trade bishops and gives my king some lift. So yeah, let's do the bishop move. I expect like f6. Then I might play bishop c3, bishop b4, bishop b4, threatening discoveries on their king. Bishop c3, of course, being a tempo gaining move on the loose knight. Again, that's another thing I think players at lower rating levels like this, they find themselves in this kind of position where, I mean, if you look around the board, they've got just loose pieces, right? So this knight is kind of bad for them in this kind of situation because I can just play bishop c3 and gain a tempo on it, allowing me to come into b4 with the bishop and threaten these really annoying discoveries on their king after I would move my rook. Yeah, I don't see anything particularly wrong with bishop c3, so let's do that. See this person's name again. Olda 2. I do appreciate that this person is taking their time, though. They do seem to be taking their time, which is definitely good. I have played in games with some lower rated opponents, and I remember as I was kind of improving myself, opponents who did not sufficiently take their time you'd be looking at a situation like this. I'd have like 11 minutes on the clock. My opponent would have like 27, 28 minutes on the clock, but they'd be in a similar kind of situation where they're losing like this. So credit to this player, they're taking their time. However, this just seems to lose a piece. So I have bishop takes c4, rook takes c4, and then rook takes d7. Otherwise, they can't recapture the knight, and this is just another point about tactical awareness. Again, it's most likely going to be a recurrent theme at this level. So doing as many tactics problems as you can is definitely the way to go to get around this kind of issue. And also looking at games from tactical players. So looking at like Mikhail Tal's games, he's probably the most famous for being a tactical magician. Also Paul Morphy, really impressive games in terms of tactical brilliance. Alexander Alyakin. Those are some of the big ones, I guess, we call attention to. So, sorry, what did they just do? I was not paying attention. Okay, so they just moved their rook pawn. Okay. Alright, so I think in this case, bishop b4 probably makes sense. Again, my bishop on c4 is not really hanging, because if they take it with rook takes c4, I'll just take on d7. And also I'm threatening discoveries after bishop b4. Let's do that. Yeah, so if they try to get their king out of possible discovery checks after my rook would move, that would be moves like king d8 or king e8. But even there, so if they played king d8, this puts them in an awkward pin. I can now play bishop e6 and have a third attacker on d7. They can't move their bishop. They're just going to be losing their bishop. Yeah, so once again, I think the major thing to take away from this game, this player can sort of look to improve with, it is definitely tactical awareness, for sure. Okay, so they counterattack my rook, but it doesn't matter because I'm just going to lead with it capturing on d7, and my bishop behind it is protected. I'll just pre-move this capture. Although, maybe I'll take with the bishop. If they play rook takes d7, I can play bishop takes d7, threatening. I don't think I have a terribly interesting discovery there, though. This, however, leads to double checkmate. So rook to d8 is a check on the king. The bishop is checking the king. In such a situation where there are two pieces checking the king, it's called a double check. And the king, as it turns out, in such a situation when you have a double check, the only option for the person in check is to move their king, but they have no moves in this situation, so this is checkmate. Alright, so good game to my opponent. I appreciate it. And we'll go and sort of look at the analysis here. So yeah, it looks like just a cursory look at the analysis. It says I made a mistake somewhere, so it'll be interesting to see what it says I made a mistake on. So yeah, again, I suspect it's going to tell us that my opponent played a good game in terms of the opening, but they ran afoul with some tactical play after that. All right, we will see. Yeah, and if you're in this rating range, I hope this game is revelatory for you. If you're not already doing it, I would highly recommend, at minimum, just putting your games through the computer's analysis tool. especially if you get an account on chess.com, which I think is the most popular chess site. But yeah, putting your games through the analysis tool and sort of seeing where your mistakes are, because what you'll find is if you don't do that, then people at your playing level. So again, this person was rated like 1074, I believe. People at your level might not always point out your errors by punishing them in the game, and you might not necessarily realize how you erred if you don't put them through the analysis tool, because the computer, even if your opponents don't show you how you erred, the computer definitely will. All right, so this is sort of what I expected. Yeah, so I had the white pieces, and often in most openings, white can build up a kind of nagging advantage. Yeah, okay, so it says that I had one inaccuracy, so we'll sort of see where that was at. But yeah, it says that, or if we look at the chart here, we see that I have sort of a nagging advantage. I suspect somewhere around here I made an inaccuracy, but it doesn't matter because it's not like a huge blunder. It maybe shaved off a few tenths of a pawn in terms of advantage. I'm not, well, no, actually the inaccuracy was probably here. Yeah, that's the inaccuracy. That's actually a little bit more interesting. We'll check that out. Okay, so if we jump into the openings book, just for completeness, what do they call it? This is they call this yeah, I'm probably not pronouncing this right, McCanas defense. Yeah, I'm not pronouncing that right, but you guys can see right here the McCanas defense, it looks like. Yeah, so let's see sort of how we did relative. Okay, so no games here. So this is theoretically bankrupt for some reason. I'm not sure. We have one game here. So some games are popping up here. All right, so not a lot of games. And, well, we get 12 games here. 126 games after this position. Okay, so this is somewhat instructive. I think I played it. Yeah, I did play h3. So the most common move by far here is h3. And the basic idea is black is looking to play e5. And you want to have somewhere to tuck your bishop away. A lot of times in the London, black or white doesn't have to immediately seek refuge or seek some kind of place to put their bishop because of the possible threat of black playing something like knight h5 or knight d5, especially knight h5, because white has usually counterattacking chances by putting their bishop on g5 in response to like knight h5. And then if we just put that on the board here real quick, let's say black didn't do this. Let's just say that, or just to illustrate, I'm not going to say all these moves are perfect, but I'm just going to illustrate the concept here. If black did this, white could do this, and then if black played like this, we could go here. Black played like this. We should be able to just take here. Well, this might not work. Yeah, let's just make sure this is right with the computer. So F, yeah, so this is good for black. So this is not illustrating point. You get a position like this, white can play off the fact that black's knight is loose here. It doesn't specifically work in this line, but it's just something to keep in mind. But because black was also threatening this move e5 here, it was definitely time to try to make some shelter for my bishop. So queen e8 is actually the second most popular move here. So kudos to my opponent for that. It looks kind of strange. I guess the idea is just, again, supporting the e-pawn push. It's not a move I would jump to, but hey, it's got some theoretical merit to it. Knight d7 is the most common move, just for interest's sake. Let's see, what do they say about c4? Okay, so they say c4 is the most common here. Bishop h2 as well. So this is a theme that I see in the London. And in anticipation of black coming to e5, oftentimes it's a good idea before black plays that to just put your bishop back on h2 and not allow black's push with e5 to come with the tempo gaining of the tempo gain of hitting your bishop. So something to keep in mind there. So c5 was definitely fine. e5. I played takes. Bishop h2 is best, or is the most common move, I guess I should say here. Let's see what the computer says. Computer says d takes e5, which is what I played, but also bishop h2. So either one of those moves seem to be playable. Okay. So let's jump back to this and see sort of how much longer it goes. It might not go much longer. Bishop h2. So they jump in with e4. So yeah, my opponent's playing sort of following theoretical lines up to this point, and I suspect the computer the computer probably doesn't like this idea. Queen c2. Yeah, it seems like it thinks it's somewhat suspect. So I mentioned knight f, or no, actually I mentioned knight b to d2 at one point. Why does knight b to d2 not work? Knight c5, knight b3. Is the idea that we're getting an attack after, or black is getting an attack after e4? Knight to e6. This is not obvious to me yet where black's advantage is coming from here. Queen c2, queen e7, a5, or rook fd1. Okay. I mean, black's knights look nice. It's not obvious to me where their advantage stems from, though. Yeah, I like my rook. So a5, a5 is stopping them with a4. Knight to b4, they've got this outpost, but knight g5 too. Here. Yeah, I'm still not seeing where the advantage stems from. Yeah, and kind of figuring this out, where this kind of advantage stems from, is an interesting exercise, but in terms of its practical value, only really probably becomes more important as you get higher and higher rated. Most importantly, it's tactical play, especially, if you're at lower rating levels. It's going to be the most important thing to get right, and then you can figure out those kind of positional nuances later. Okay, so let's take it from here with the computer. We'll probably just check out a few more lines here. So I played a3. They say that's an inaccuracy. So that's my one main inaccuracy of the game. I was thinking knight c3. Just didn't want to deal with knight b4. But computer says, yeah, that's fine. So queen c1, it's mentioning queen d2, queen b3. I probably would play queen b3 in this kind of situation. I don't want to play queen c1 and clog up my rooks. I don't want to put my queen on the d file, which is going to be a magnet for a rook on d8. Here they support with, and then, okay. So it's interesting. So the computer is basically just saying you should go for development as opposed to trying to stop threats that aren't really that threatening, which is a good point. Okay, so let's go back and just pick out a few more points here. Knight c3. So computer doesn't like this move, queen d7, and then I was kind of unclear as well about why they did this. Because again, it clogs up their bishop. What is it doing on this diagonal? Bishop f5 is the move the computer was suggesting, to which white can play queen a4. But yeah, I thought at some point black was going to play bishop f5. Made a whole lot of sense, especially with my queen on c2. But yeah, I lined up. Computer says you should have put your A rook on D1. That's interesting, but practically it doesn't make a whole lot of difference. Okay, and then of course this was a mistake with C5, winning the piece being best. So we'll check out this and then this other tactical sequence. So it likes knight D5, bishop E7, and this is knight C7 was good, but queen C7 would have been better. Yeah, again, not a whole lot of difference there. I'm not going to get too wrapped up in that issue because each of them are still totally winning. Okay, so tactically this was fine. It wasn't optimal, but yeah, so it did like rook takes D6. And then from here, yeah, so I mentioned this move, rook D2 in the game, and it seems to prefer that. But I wanted to just keep my pieces coming, so I played rook D1, or rook A to D1. Rook C7 just defending is an inaccuracy. And usually when you kind of retreat and go on the defense, that's less optimal than trying to figure out a way to make threats, so that's not surprising. It didn't like bishop takes E5. I mean, it didn't hate it, but said it wasn't optimal. So bishop C3 was best. And again, this just lost a piece. All right, and then just the rest of this seemed to be correct. Okay, and then, yeah. Okay, so, yeah, a game which I think exemplifies the need for doing more tactics, essentially, at this kind of rating level. I hope you guys got something out of the game. If you have any comments or anything, let me know. Otherwise, looking forward to making some new content. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks a lot.